Hey guys, in this video, we're going to see if Cynthia, the Sinnoh Champion, has a broken or a bad team. Let's get right into it. I start off with my Spiritomb, he goes Quagsire. He goes for the Whirlpool, traps me. I go for the Will-O-Wisp, get that burn. They then decide to go into the Gliscor. I go for the Curse, take a half of my health to make him lose a bit of his. He then switches into his Scissor. I go for the Will-O-Wisp, but I completely missed it. He then Mega Evolves right in front of my face, goes for the Swords Dance, but this time I connect with the Will-O-Wisp, completely ruining the Scissor. Get some lefties. I then decide to switch into my Milotic. He goes for the Bullet Punch, does nothing to my Snake. Get some lefties back, he gets his lefties. I go for the Skull, doing a nice chunk to the Bug. He goes for the Dual Wing Beat again, Milotic's able to eat that up. He takes some burn, I get some lefties, decide to go for the Recover to top myself off. He goes for the knockoff, I end up losing my leftovers. Takes a little bit more burn. He then switches into his Gliscor. I go for the Scald, take out the Gliscor. He then switches into his Lock Kicks. Goes for the First Impression, does a nice chunk to me, but I'm able to hang on. Go for the Scald, get the burn. Takes a little bit of burn damage. Goes for the Sucker Punch, but it fails because I'm going for the Recover to top myself off. Takes a little bit more burn damage. Starts Swords Dancing right in front of my face. Go for the Scald, take out the Bug. He then switches into his Quagsire. I decide to switch into my Roserade. He goes for the Toxic, but I'm immune to that. Takes a little bit of burn damage. Go for the Energy Ball, take out Quagsire. He then goes into his King Gambit, gets the Supreme Overlord boost. I go for the Sleep Powder, but completely miss. He starts dancing with swords. I go for the Sleep Powder, this time I connect. He's sleeping over there. I then switch into my Lucario. He's still sleeping over there. I go for the Close Combat, take out the King Gambit. Lose some defense, take some life orb damage. He then goes into his Heatran. I go for a Close Combat, take out the Heatran. My opponent then forfeits. Good game. At this time, I ask you guys to please like, comment, share, and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. But without further ado, let's get into game 2. I start off with my Roserade, he starts off with Minior. I go for the Sleep Powder, forgetting about his ability. He goes for the Shell Smash, gets the boost, eats his herb, then goes for the Acrobatics, knocks my Roserade down to the Sash. Go for the Energy Ball, do a nice chunk. He switches forms, and then he goes for the Acrobatics again, takes out my Roserade. I then switch into my Lucario, go for the Bullet Punch, take out the little rock over there. Take some Life Orb damage. He then goes into his Toxapex. I then decide to switch into my Togekiss. He goes for the Icy Wing, gets that damage and the speed lower. I then go for the Psychic, do a nice chunk to the Toxapex. He goes for the Sludge Bomb, does a nice chunk back to me. Get some health from the Sludge. Go for another Psychic, get the Special Defense drop. He then poisons me with the Toxic, get some Sludge back, I take some poison damage. He then switches into his Delmice. I go for the Psychic, do a little bit to him, take a little bit more poison damage. I then go for the Air Slash, do a big chunk to the Delmice, get the lucky flinch, but unable to take him out. He then switches back into his Toxapex, go for the Air Slash, do a little bit to him, and then I finally go down to the poison. I then go into my Spiritomb, exert that pressure, go for the Will-O-Wisp for some residual damage. He goes for the Toxic with the same idea. We both take a little bit of damage, get our lefties in Sludge. He then goes back into the Delmites. I go for the Curse, half my health, give him the Curse, and then eventually take him out. He then goes into his Raichu, goes for the Draining Kiss, but Spiritomb is able to hang on. I decide to go for the Momentum, take myself out, lower his stats. I then go into my Garchomp. He uses it to switch into his Haxorus, gets the Mold Breaking. I go for the Earthquake, do a big chunk. I then go for another Earthquake, knowing I could outspeed because I'm Choice Scarfed, and able to take out the Haxorus. He then goes back into the Toxapex. I'm able to go for the Terra Steel, Earthquake, do a big chunk, and then resist the Icy Wind. He gets some Sludge and some Burn. I then take him out with another Earthquake. He then goes into his Arcanine. I decide to switch, go into my Milotic. He goes for the Terrafire Burn Up. I'm able to resist that, but it still does a good chunk to me. He burns himself out, takes some Life Orb damage. He then goes into his Raichu. I go for the Skull, do a nice chunk, get the lucky burn, and then get some lefties. He takes some damage to the burn. I then switch into my Lucario. He goes for the Draining Kiss, does a little chunk to me, takes some more burn damage, goes for the T-Wave, trying to get the lucky Para, but I'm able to break through, take him out to Close Combat. I lose some defense there, take some damage to the Life Orb. He then goes into the Arcanine, goes for the Agility, trying to get some speed up. I go for the Close Combat, do a huge chunk, almost take out the Arcanine. I get the full Para Hacks. He goes for the Burn Up, is able to take out my Lucario, but he also goes down to his Life Orb. Good game. Alrighty, let's get into game 3. He starts off with the Blaziken, I start off with the Roserade. I go for the Sleep Powder, put the chicken to sleep. He's sleeping over there, gets his speed boost. He then gets that first turn wake up, goes for the Fire Punch, and knocks my Roserade down to the Sash. I go for the Toxic Spikes, trying to set up some hazards. He gets another speed boost, goes for the Mirror move, fails, go for another Toxic Spikes, gets some more speed boosting over here, and then takes me out the Fire Punch. He gets another speed boost over there. I then go into my Militick. He goes for the close combat, does a nice chunk to my Militick, gets the defense lower. I go for the Scald, take out the Blaziken. I get some lefties back. He then decides to go into his Xurkitree, gets some poison. I switch into my Garchomp expecting the electric move, but he ends up going for the Z Hypnosis. Gets the boost, puts me to sleep. Takes a little bit of poison damage. I then switch into my Spiritomb, exert that pressure. He goes for the Tail Glow, keeps boosting up over there, takes a little more damage. Goes for the Discharge, I'm able to just hang on. Go for the Curse, take myself out. He takes some poison damage and some curse damage. I then go into my Lucario, go for the extreme speed, take out the Xurkitree. He then decides to go into his Mew, gets that poison. I decide to switch into my Togekiss. He goes for the Earth Power, I'm able to avoid that. Takes a little more poison damage. He goes for the Psychic, does a nice chunk to me. I go for the Air Slash, do a nice bit to him. He takes some more damage. I take another Psychic. I go for the Air Slash, and then the poison ends up taking out the Mew. He then switches into his Togekiss. I go for the Air Slash, do about a quarter there, get the lucky flinch, go for another Air Slash. He goes for the Ancient Power, thankfully does not get the boost, and then switches into his Tyranitar. He gets poison, whips up some sand. I go for the Dazzling Gleam, do a huge chunk to the Tyranitar, take a little bit more damage, go for another Dazzling Gleam, take out Tyranitar. Togekiss then finally goes down to the sand. I then go back into my Militick, he goes back into his Togekiss, he goes for the Air Slash, gets a flinch, now I can't use my Ice Beam, we both take some sand damage, get some lefties, he goes for the Air Slash, takes out my Militick. I then decide to go back into my Lucario, go for the Bullet Punch, take out the Togekiss. The sand finally goes away, he then goes into his last Mon, the Steelix, goes for the Mega Evolution, I go for the Terra Fighting, close combat, one-shot the Steelix. Good game. Alrighty, let's get into that last game. I go for the Roserade, he goes for the Scolipede, he sets up some spikes, I whiff the Sleep Powder, he gets a little bit of a speed boost, and then goes for another layer of spikes. I'm able to hit the Sleep Powder finally, gets another speed boost. I then decide to switch into my Togekiss, he's sleeping over there, gets another boost, really catching up on some beauty sleep over there. I whiff the Air Slash, he's still boosting over there, still sleeping. Go for the Air Slash, finally connect and take out the Scolipede. He then goes into his Jellicent. I use this to switch into my Roserade, take some hazard damage, absorb that Toxic, no problem. He then goes into his Dragapult, which I put to sleep with the Sleep Powder. I then switch into my Garchomp, take some spike damage, Dragapult's still sleeping over there. I then decide to go for the Dragon Claw, take out the Dragapult. He then goes into his Togekiss. I decide to switch back into my Spiritomb, take some damage, apply that pressure. He goes for the Nasty Plot, starts setting up right in front of my face. I get some lefties, he goes for the Air Slash, does a big chunk to me. I go for the Curse, take myself out, but curse the Togekiss. He takes some damage from the Curse. I then decide to go into my Militick, take some spikes damage. He goes for another Nasty Plot. I go for the Ice Beam, do a nice chunk to the Togekiss. Get some of my lefties back, he takes more damage from the Curse. Aces the Blackberry, gets that speed boost, then goes for the Terrifier Draining Kiss, does a nice chunk to me, gets his health back, but I go for the Recover. He takes some more curse damage, then goes for another Draining Kiss, gets some health back, but I go for the Scald, do a huge chunk to the Togekiss. I get some of my lefties, he takes more curse damage, and finally goes down. He then goes into his Earth Ring, I go for another Recover just to top myself off. He goes for the Trailblaze as a nice chunk, gets that speed boost. I get some more lefties back, he then goes for the Bulk Up again, tries to set up right in front of my face. I decide to Toxic him, get some of that residual damage. He takes some damage, I get some lefties, I then switch into my Togekiss, he goes for the Trailblaze, which I'm able to resist, he gets another speed boost, takes some more poison damage, then goes for the Retaliate and takes out my Togekiss. He takes some more poison damage, I then decide to go into my Lucario, take some spikes, he goes into his Jellicent, expecting the fighting move, gets that right, I do no damage. I then decide to switch back into my Roserade, take a little bit of damage, he goes for the Scald, I'm able to eat that right up. He then switches back into his Earth Ring. I go for the Energy Ball, do a nice chunk to the bear. He takes some more poison damage. I then go for another Energy Ball and take out the Earth Ring. He then decides to go into his King Gambit, gets that Supreme Overlord boost. I go for the Sleep Powder, put him to sleep. He's snoring over there. I then switch into my Garchomp, take a little bit more hazard damage. He's still sleeping over there. He goes into his Jellicent. I decide to go for the Earthquake, do a nice chunk to the Jellyfish, go for another Earthquake and take him out. He then goes into his last mon, the Sleeping King Gambit. I go for an Earthquake, do a big chunk to him over there. He's still sleeping over there. He finally wakes up, goes for the Sucker Punch, does a nice chunk, but I'm able to hang on. He takes some Rough Skin, but then goes down to the Earthquake. Good game. And that's the video. Please let me know what you guys think of the team down below, and please stay tuned for more future content. Peace!